Could you introduce yourself for those who might not know you yet?
My name is Dino Esposito. Who am I? I served as, and I still serve as a software architect, but also as a speaker, a trainer, and recently also as a copywriter or just plain storyteller, because this is an area that has to do primarily with the customers I found. So I'm a consultant, full spectrum of consultant, full range consultant, and whatever software is based, I'm there. I've been in this industry for over 25 years now, and I assisted from the very beginning the growth, the birth and the growth of the Microsoft.NET framework. I'm still primarily a Microsoft person, even though over the past few years I moved more towards software architecture, and the more general terms of software. An area of interest I have right now is, yes, real-time systems, and also the role that energy is playing in software, so consumption of energy. So, and I think this is essentially mostly driven by the customers I have and find along the way.
Can you describe your story about choosing .NET as a main technology you work with?
Yeah, I mean, I always and only worked on .NET, and before .NET was made available some 20 years, nearly 20 years ago now, I worked on the Microsoft frameworks for object-oriented programming, MFC, ATL, and even before that in C. But always Windows development. I think that beyond Windows, the only other platform I ever touched was IBM Kix and mainframes, but that was 92, 93, so the dawn. It's a completely different era of software development. I was involved as a storyteller and then as a developer since the very beginning of the .NET. I remember to have worked on the alpha and then the beta in 2001. I was a presenter at TechEd, the first at Microsoft TechEd, before the first 1.0 version of .NET was released. And then I worked side by side with the ASP.NET team for many years. I assisted and to some extent encouraged and shared a lot of feedback on the first extensions of ASP.NET towards Ajax. I, in a way, making the history run, sort of received in a cold way the evolution towards MVC, but then I loved it. I was very, very cold towards Web API as a distinct framework, and I was right on that point, because now in core it totally disappeared, because it was essentially a due step from the perspective of Microsoft development teams, but completely a nonsense feature for users, and I had to fight with many developers, architects, saying, oh, no, we have to go Web API, REST. No, it's total nonsense in the context in which it was used. And now, the latest version of core, Web API still remains, has an abstract name to mean a UI-less server, but all of the pipeline behind Web API has been merged with the MVC framework to give a single programming experience to developers. So I know no world without .NET. So if you say Java, I say what?
Have you ever looked on other worlds?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. If a huge customer comes my way, offers $1 million, million euros actually, to take care of a huge project, but it's in Java, well, I would be tempted. Make me the offer, and then we'll see what I can say. No, honestly, I don't see realistic any shift towards Java. I had the chance to move because I mean, one of the things, many things I do is being a developer advocate for JetBrains, and you know, JetBrains is a company that does a lot of development on Java. They have their own Java-based language, Kotlin, and I had a chance to be involved with Kotlin development since the very early days, years ago, but it never captured my heart. I don't know why. I mean, I'm so happy, so fine, and as long as I can do my own things, why change?
Dina, you are speaking at .NET Fest second time in a row. What are your impressions about the conference, Ukraine in general, and Ukrainian IT specialists?
I've been a few times in this part of the world, and I mean Ukraine, I mean also Belarus, which is a friend country, in Russia as well, and I would say that the east part of Europe, including in this context, also maybe Romania, Moldova, and maybe even Bulgaria to some extent, Poland as well. So there, Latvia, Lithuania, they are probably the countries in Europe where the enthusiasm for development, and .NET has one of the maybe two giant platforms for development is concerned. These are the countries where the enthusiasm is at the maximum levels. That reminds me what was being a developer in Italy, in Germany, in UK, in the US, in the early days of .NET, so some 15 to 20 years ago. So at the beginning of the age of conferences, because outside a country, a relatively young country like Ukraine, the enthusiasm of conferences is much lower in many other parts of the world. So when I come here, I see and perceive on my own skin the warmth of people, the genuine interest and enthusiasm and passion for what they do, and for the fact that they can learn from others, can listen, talk to other colleagues, other peer developers, and the fact that they can share what they know. So this is something that is pretty unique. I believe that this is going down in 10 years maybe, because it becomes moves more towards a commodity, so being a commodity. So conferences are in the west part of the world, including US, are for the most part commodities, but where they are something new and something that keeps the interest of people high, they gives speakers and attendees a strength, a sense of passion and sense of happiness in a way that is pretty unique. So this is the second time in my career that I experienced that, because I was part in the late 90s, early 2000s, active part of building and organizing conferences. So I know very well what it means as an attendee, as a speaker, and as an organizer. And I'm reliving this kind of feelings thanks to the guys like the .NET people that invited me for the second time, and hopefully not the last time, in Ukraine in this kind of conferences.
You talked about microservices last year. This time you're going to talk about ASP.NET Blazor and refactoring. Why you have chosen these topics for your speeches?
You know what? The real reason is that the talk that I had on microservices, not in the instance that I've run here, but in other further instances that I gave at different conferences, it was not very well received. And I think I can figure out the reason. It was in a way too high level and way of thinking microservices, too far from practical technologies that people expect to hear about when they go to a talk that has microservices in the title. Because I was not talking about Kubernetes, I was not talking about cloud services, I was not talking about Docker, but I was talking about reporting, actually, my direct experience of a small company, small startup that actually grew up building one piece of software, one piece of a server and service after the next, up to the point of looking at the entire graph of services. They were actually microservices architecture, because they were small pieces connected together in different ways, maybe sharing databases, maybe sharing data, maybe sharing a bus or HTTP APIs. So my point was actually to do a microservice architecture not necessarily has to be planned as a game in which I have my own boxes and I decide what is the right size of the boxes, how much I can scale a single box or whatever. My point was more, let's build things as they come. But on the other end, the point was, okay, you are not giving us patterns, you are not giving us concrete advice, you are just telling your story. So I decided just to go on something more practical. And Blazor is something I really love, and I hope that will have a deep impact in the future of development, because in a way, I see Blazor has a properly done a Silverlight. Silverlight was an immense, wonderful piece of technology that disappeared overnight. And one of the reasons it was never very well received, it was mostly taken because it was forced to people, but it was never probably deeply loved by people because of the issue it has with the plugins. It was a plugin, so you needed to install as a user a plugin, blah blah blah, and this is things that people never loved that much. Blazor is different because it's based on a web standard, the W3C WebAssembly, and this is in one flavor it comes. Another flavor it comes is it's called server-side Blazor. Essentially, it's a server-side application that communicates, essentially maintains a sort of virtual DOM on the server and updates the physical DOM over a WebSocket connection. This is, well, it's not bad, and it's going to be promising, and it's bringing the power of C# really, really close, if not inside the browser. And it can be an alternative to Angular, or maybe to libraries like React or Vue.js, not because there's something wrong in those libraries, but because they still represent a significant paradigm shift for all those developers that for many different reasons have matured a significant experience in ASP.NET. So if you are a young developer, if you're just starting your career, if you are kind of person that loves to have new challenges, okay, you can embrace Angular, Vue, anything new with a lot of enthusiasm. But when you are getting of age, or you have a significant background, or you don't have the time, the bandwidth to learn new things, well, Blazor can possibly allow you to do more scalable and more dynamic applications on the old familiar ASP.NET platform.